Hello, this is Elizabeth for Splitcoaststampers. In this video I'm going to show you how to colour hair using alcohol based markers. So you can see that I've stamped my image twice, once on just plain cardstock and once on my blending card. This is an optional step, you don't have to stamp your image twice, but when I was first learning how to colour I found it a really good way to use this image on the cardstock, just the plain cardstock, just to work out where your highlights and where your shadows are going to go. So on your plain image I've just grabbed a light coloured and a dark coloured marker, and I'm going to use my dark coloured marker first, and I'm going to work out where all my shadows are going to be on my image. So the first thing, I'm just going to say that my light source is going to be coming straight onto my image. So the first thing I can see is this band that's going around her head. It's going to be in front of her hair, so her hair all along behind here is going to have a cast shadow along it. So you can draw all that in. There might be a little small cast shadow under there as well on the other side. And then the general rule with hair is that it's going to be darker at the crown of the hair, and then the hair's going out, so it's closer to your light source or your sun, and it's coming away from it again, so it's going to be darker at the tips. So you're going to have, it's going to be all darker all along at the crown of the hair, and it's going to be darker at the tips. So each tip is dark. So this is a tip of this section of hair here. So that's going to be darker as well. So this was another tip behind here. So you really need to look at each section of hair and sort of break it down into sections and have a look at each section. This is a nice and easy one because it's got all these different artist drawn lines in there, so you can work out and just follow the lines. They sort of show you the direction of the hair. Sometimes it's a bit harder when you just get the outline drawn for you and you've got to imagine all these lines on the inside. So this is another tip in here. It's coming out to the highlight section in here, and down in here it's going to be dark in there. She's going to have a cast shadow from her face onto her hair. And then up the top as well, it's going to be a dark bit behind there. And then again, you're flicking, so that's going to be darker across there. And then down here again, you're going to be, it's also a cast shadow around this. And at the tips back up. So that's just a good way of being able to have a look at all the shadows on your image. And if you wanted to, you could go and just add in where all your highlights are going to be. So you're going to have your highlights through the middle, through there, and basically in the middle of each of your shadow sections. So if you have a look at the top of her head, because part of her hair is out, it's not going to work exactly, but you can see that it sort of travels around in a circle, and that's generally where the highlight area is. So when you look at someone's head, you can sort of see like a halo that goes around the top of it, and that'll be where your highlight area is, depending on the hairstyle, of course. So once you've done that, you can use that as a guide for when you're colouring in your other image. So what I do is I'm going to start with my darkest coloured marker. Also, another option, if you didn't want to stamp your image twice, you don't have to do this shadow mapping on this second image. You could go straight to your image that you're going to colour and just use your lightest coloured marker, or your second lightest coloured marker, and go around and just add in all where you think all the shadows are going to be on this image. And if you made a mistake because you're using your lightest marker, it doesn't matter, and when you finish colouring you won't notice that you did a mistake anyway with the mapping of where the shadows are going to go. So because I've already done my image on here, I'm not going to worry about doing that on here. But if you didn't want to stamp the second image, you could just do it straight on here. or if you've been colouring for a long time, just start off colouring straight away. So I'm going to start with my darkest coloured marker, and I'm going to go around and flick in all my dark areas. So as I said before, we're going from the tips up towards your highlight and from your crown or your parts down towards the highlight. So you want to do as nice thin little strokes. It's kind of like a flicking motion, and you're just going to flick up towards your highlight. And you can notice that I'm leaving gaps in between it. It's not just one block of colour. This will make it look more like strands of hair. So some of these little sections you might only get one little flick in those. And I generally like to flick away from myself, so I'm going to be turning my page around quite a bit. So I'm just holding the marker, and you can also see that I'm following the artist drawn lines, so I'm not going in my own direction, I'm actually curving my flicks around to match with the lines that have been drawn on for the hair as well. To me, it almost looks like this piece of hair is sitting in front of all these bits here, so I'm actually going to add in a cast shadow across the back of that there too. Just going to turn my page around. So again, I'm going to flicking now from the crown towards your highlight, so the opposite end that we just did. So now remember, on our other piece of paper we did this cast shadow all behind here, so you can draw that in with your darkest marker. So you just draw a line all the way across just behind that. And then I'm going to flick up from there as well. So you can see I'm leaving gaps. I'm trying to follow the artist lines as well, and I'm making my flicks not all the same length, so they're all varying lengths as well. And again, I'm going to flick from the crown down the round. So if you weren't sure where you put in your dark marker, remember to go back and look at your image and have a look where you marked it in. So just to use that as a guide. So I think I've covered all that with my darkest marker. So I'm going to choose my next lightest coloured marker, and I'm going to go over all of that again, but I'm just going to extend the flicks further out towards the highlight section. So I'm still using that flicking motion, and you pretty much go sort of straight over where you've already been. So you're still using little flicks, but you can add in like more flicks if you wanted to as well. You can see I'm still leaving some white gaps in there as well. Okay, once you've done all that, you grab your next lightest marker. And when you're doing an image with hair, you want at least a dark, a medium and a light coloured marker. You can use, I'm using 4 markers today, but you could use 5 if you wanted, or more as well, depending on how big your image is. So again, with my next lightest, this is my 3rd marker now, I'm going to go over the top of all those again, and I'm still going to leave these white gaps in here. And keeping in mind that I've only got 1 more marker to go, so it sort of gauges how much of the white space I'm going to fill in. Now some people also like their final image to include some white space in the middle, like where the highlight area is. Personally, I don't like that, so I'm going to be filling in all of my white space. But if you were to leave, if you do like the white space left in the middle, then I wouldn't fill in as much now. So leave room for that white space. Leave room for your markers and for that white space in the end as well. So I'm still flicking, I'm not blending, and I'm just flicking towards that highlight still. Now I'm going to use my lightest marker, and I'm still going to flick the colour in. So this is where, if you want to leave white space in the middle, don't flick to cover up all the white space, but I don't want the white space in the middle, so I'm going to be flicking to cover up all the white space. So now I'm just taking my darkest marker again, and I'm just flicking the colour across all over the areas that I've already gone around. And I'm adding my cast shadows back in again as well, and just flicking the darkest colour in. So now I'm going to take my next lightest marker and just going to go over the top of that. So again, because this is the 2nd round, you don't have to be so precise or exact as the 1st round. You can add new little bits in if you want, like flick in slightly different directions. Making sure to still leave gaps where you can see it, that sort of travels down towards the dark area still. So you'll notice if you look at people's hair, it's not just a band of dark in the darkest section, there's still little bits of lighter colour in those sections as well. And then you want to take your 3rd lightest marker and go over it again. Just little flicks, doesn't have to be too much colour on this one. And then just do your lightest coloured marker, and again you don't have to add in the whole section, but you can just add little bits of flicks of colour in the middle. And again, if you wanted to leave those white highlights, make sure you leave space in the middle. of the very brightest of the highlight area. I personally don't like that white section in the middle, so I've covered all mine up. And there's your hair finished.